Okay, I'm back again, and this is part 2 of the restoration. And what we want to look at right here is selecting the area of the background so that we can just apply the background that we created, that new texture, to this bad background without it affecting the actual image, anything that we want. So we're simply going to be masking it, and before we mask it, we want to make a selection that the mask is going to be applied to. Now, in the last video, we started doing that by just taking the brush on the mask and just brushing it, and it applies the new texture. So we can definitely do that, and the closer we get to fine detail, the more small and precise we need to be with our brush. So that's one way of doing it, and if I make a mistake, I can actually just invert this to black and just bring that back, because I'm working on a mask. So that's always going to work to fix these things. If I wanted to do a different kind of selection, there's a couple of things we could do. We could use the magic wand, and keep in mind when you're selecting something, make sure that the thing that has the most detail is what's being selected. So for instance, if I use the magic wand on this, it's going to be applying it based on this. And so what we end up with is this. Not a heck of a lot of detail. So we don't want to do that. What we do want to do is select the area that actually has detail, which is this underlying image. And so if I select that, we should have, with a higher tolerance, a more accurate selection. And I can just add to this by clicking on the Shift key. And just you kind of wrap that up. So you can still see that we have areas that are really similar. So a couple ways we can approach that. We could take, for instance, the marquee tool, and using the Alt key to subtract from the selection, and like a circle or oval, I could do something like this, and that gives me a more accurate selection there. But I still have to deal with something along these lines. If we zoom in here, you can't do it on CS5 without the grid appearing. But if we zoom in here, you can see that it's not quite precise as well as there. So I'm going to deselect that. That's not very accurate when we're dealing with something that's all the same color. Something that we can do that kind of helps us out with these edges is a temporary mask with the threshold. And let me put that up on top. So what we're looking at is the threshold, which adjusts either a black or white value on your image. And I want something that just gives me a clearly defined edge for most of this silhouette. And so somewhere right around here. I don't want to go here because we're losing it. And I don't want to go here because, well, we're losing it again. So right around there, I think. And making sure that this layer is selected, I can now use the magic wand and select it. And as you can see, let me just turn this off. It's selected right along the edge of this pretty well. And I can just add to that selection, or I can just ignore this by going back into that mask with the background and taking my brush, painting with white, and that's going to apply that new texture right over here, right up to the very edges without going over. And I'm going to grab the magic wand and just kind of bring that in and apply that. Okay, so basically we should end up with our actual image, and all the background area is masked away, or masked over, so that you just see the nice new texture. And don't worry about this, it's underneath. We'll pull from that later. So for right now, we're just applying the nice texture. Okay. So I have my image. It has a new texture behind it, but as you can see, there's like a color halo around here that's like very yellow-red here, but then desaturated here. We want to kind of fix that. One way you can do that is to create a new layer on top of this. And let me throw out that threshold. That was just for making the selection. And on this new layer, I'm going to sample one of the colors that's in here. And then I'm going to fill that new layer. And you can go to Alt Backspace or Edit Fill. I'll do Edit Fill just for the screen with the foreground color. And it fills that. And now if I change this to color mode, you'll notice the background is consistent all over here, whereas before it wasn't. And so color mode is really good for balancing out color. So I'm going to apply that, and I want to take this mask that we had over here and fine-tune it a little bit, because obviously we can see that there's a couple points that we missed. And if I want to know where I'm missing something on this mask, I could hit the / key, and that shows me a graphical representation of the area that's masked. So using that, I'm now going to apply the mask anywhere that I missed. And anywhere that I went overboard, I'm going to bring it back. So that was the / key that we used to show this pink area to represent what's actually being masked over with this layer. And so I clean that up. Let me just turn the / off, and right over here we need to bring back. Okay. So I'm going to hit Control and click on this mask, and it's going to give me the selection again from that mask. Then I'm going to take this new layer on top, and I'm going to click Mask, and it's going to apply the same mask to it. Essentially what that's doing is that's taking the color, that balance that we applied, and it's applying it only to the background, not to the image that's underneath it. That's what it would look like if it was being applied to the image underneath. That's what it looks like originally. So we're going to leave that as it was and just apply that color balance on top. And lastly, I don't really like the texture's gray kind of tones to it, and I'll show you what I mean with an improvement to it. I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to change the color mode to soft light. And I don't know if you can see, let me just zoom in a little bit. Before and after, this tone back here has a lot less gray to it. It's a little more warm and comfortable looking. Okay, so that's what I have, and I can even tone that down a little bit. That's before, that's after. Okay, I feel better about that. So I'm going to take what I have, duplicate the original background layer, and merge everything else together. Okay, so I now have before and after with this background layer. And that's the end of this part 2. Check in with me for part 3, which will be following shortly.